Good evening and welcome to the Burbank Police Commission meeting for April 16th, 2025. Before we begin, I just want to give an announcement about public comment. To speak during public comment, members of the public may speak for 3 minutes in person in the council chamber, or they may call 818-238-3335. That's 818-238-3335. Members of the public who attend the meeting in chamber will speak first, followed by those phoning in their comments. We'll go ahead and start with our call to order.
Commissioner Chapman?
Present.
Chair Coombs?
Here.
Commissioner Ellman?
Here.
Commissioner Feruzin? Here. Commissioner Hakobian?
Here.
Commissioner McKenna?
Present.
Commissioner Wenzel?
Present.
Thank you. And actually, technically, that was the roll call, and I guess by starting talking, that's the call to order. So we'll keep rolling, we'll keep moving forward. Ann, if you want to lead us in our flag salute.
Please stand, place your right hand over your heart, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ann. All right, so what we'll do is we will go into item C, which is commission announcements and reporting out by commissioners and ad hoc subcommittees. Let's go ahead and move from my right to my left. Ann, would you like to start?
Yes, of course. The only thing, I wasn't able to attend any of the events going on the last few days, but I did have the opportunity to catch up on my block with a couple of neighbors who complained about the e-bikes on Chandler, which just tells us that we're, at a good spot. And they also complained about cars just cruising through the stop signs at Mariposa and Chandler.
Brand new.
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe they were a surprise. Maybe they're just in a hurry, but that's really all I have to report.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Mike?
I said goodbye to Chief Albanese. I'm looking forward to meeting our new chief, and that's all I have to report.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Yeah, for me, I think it's a discussion item later on, so I'm just going to share out the work I did for the pedestrian safety ad hoc
Fantastic. Thank you.
subcommittee.
Thank you. Was the farewell to Chief Albanese before the last commission meeting or after? Okay, all right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so that means I did almost nothing this last month and everything. So, Mike, go ahead.
Also said goodbye to Chief Albanese and went to the event with the Met team, Macaroon with a Met team.
Awesome.
Very, very interesting conversations taking place, that there were a lot of mental health professionals who showed up and had interesting conversations.
Fantastic. Paul?
I was fortunate enough to be able to attend the Met event as well and the Community Police Academy. Just when I attended the NOCOL conference in Chicago, there were only two things that I heard that applied to us that maybe we could polish. I don't want to say improve, but we could polish. And one was the mental health, which I also knew at the time was already in the works. And so it's just really gratifying to see that it's up and becoming an example for others. And I had the privilege of attending the community police event with, community police event with Commissioner Hagopian. I would say this, there's a couple of the presentations that were there, including the one that Sergeant Turner was doing that night, that might be appropriate even for us to take a look at. They were, it was very obviously very well done. It was his program down there was about school shootings, and it was, Romick and I got to watch him do a little rehearsal, and it was very well done, very informative. And I think it's great. The only problem with that is you're preaching to the choir. You're preaching to people that already want to do what we're doing.
Paul, thank you. Romick, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Coombs. I, too, on April 3rd, attended the Police Community Academy. Thank you, Sergeant Turner, for the invitation. It was great to present on the Police Commission, discuss the role of the Police Commission, and how people can get involved if they're ever interested in applying. And on March 25th, I also entered the Macaroons with Met. I love macaroons, so it was a great event. It was really great to see the police department out there engaging with the local community. And then for the committee updates, I have an update from the driver for the driver safety campaign. I got some really exciting news. Chief Alex Galzabor from the city of Burbank, city of Arvin. He's a police chief, and he's also a board member of the Burbank Police Foundation. He found out about the campaign that we're doing, and he wants to extend the campaign to the city of Arvin. And generously offered to donate to print over 10,000 copies of the trifold once it materializes, which is pretty amazing. And then, again, thank you to Lieutenant Barkis for being a great partner on this. We're working on a possible workshop with the Boys and Girls Club. And that is all I have to report on that.
Romick, thank you for that. And again, thank you both for covering the Community Academy event. I unfortunately was tied up with work, so I wasn't able to attend, so I appreciate you being there. And I also wanted to give a thank you. I was in communication a little bit with Sherry, who's helping us get materials ready for the May 10th event. So Sherry, thank you for helping arrange for the Easy Up and the table and everything. So thank you for that. All right, we will go ahead and we're going to move into oral communications, and I'll repeat again. To speak during public comment, members of the public may speak for 3 minutes in person in the council chamber, or they may call 818-238-3335. Members of the public who attend the meeting in chamber will speak first, followed by those phoning in their comments. And I don't think we have any comments in the audience here. Do we have any callers?
No calls pending.
Okay, thank you so much. So we're going to go ahead and move on to item E, commission response to public comments. And I just wanted to lift up for our process, the commission response to public comments can be comments that we're receiving either in person or via phone this evening. We can also respond, and Ray, I might need your help with this. We can also respond to emails that we may have received. And what about conversations that take place in the community? Ann was talking with some of the neighbors about some specific issues. Would that be appropriate for the response to public comments period, or is it better in the beginning when kind of we're announcing what activities we've been up to?
Depending on what the nature of that conversation is, I think it would depend, but bringing it up in the beginning is a good idea. And then if there is something that you would like to, specifically address concerning what, like a comment or a question or concern, that would be brought up here.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. So are there any emails or any other things that folks want to bring up in response to the community?
I'd like to follow up on what Ms. Wenzel said about Mariposa and Chandler. That's my house. I face it.
Paul, hold on 1 second. Go ahead.
So this wouldn't be the time to address that issue.
Yeah.
Yes, I was following up on her. Okay.
Yeah, what we can do is we can respond to comments that we received or comments that we received here in house, but we can't go into discussion around other issues. Sorry about that, Paul. Okay. All right. Any other responses to public comment that folks wanted to share? Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to item F, which is the approval of the minutes from March 19th, 2025. Thank you, Sherry and Paul, for preparing those. I need a motion to approve. Motion from Mike Chapman, second. Mike Ellman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? One abstention. With Layla, she wasn't here. Perfect. Okay, so those pass. Thank you for that. And we're going to go ahead and move on to item G. Item G1, presentation and discussion and recommendations, if applicable, on efforts and strategies related to equity and inclusion in recruitment, hiring, and promotional processes. And we have Lieutenant Derek Green here with us. Lieutenant, welcome back.
Thank you. Welcome. Good evening to you, commissioners. Welcome to myself. Yeah, thank you. So I'm here tonight to provide a brief presentation on equity and how it applies to our hiring and recruitment efforts and also our internal promotions, reassignments, things like that. So I don't claim to be an expert on this topic. I do oversee our recruitment section, which deals with all things related to recruitment, hiring, and for the past 3 promotional exams, I was a part of those as well. So I have kind of had a front row seat through the processes over the past several years. Just to be clear, I had to look up the word equity to see exactly how it applied to hiring. So I'll start with that definition. But it basically, it means ensuring fair and equal opportunities for all candidates and employees, regardless of background or demographic characteristics. So just so we are clear on how that applies to what we're going to be discussing tonight. And I do have a brief PowerPoint, if we could start that. So our goals and priorities within the organization haven't changed much. I know we've heard a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion over the past several years. But really going back as long as I've been with the department, over 21 years, we've always made it a goal to recruit a diverse workforce and a workforce that is representative of the community we're serving. Burbank is a very diverse community, and it is certainly our intention to have employees, police officers, non-sworn employees that are representative of the demographics here within the city. We also strive to provide equal opportunities to those who are employed with us at the police department, as long as their minimum qualifications are met, whether it's criteria established by the state of California for a police officer to promote to the next rank, or criteria set forth here in the city. We base it on work performance and meeting those requirements as far as providing opportunities for growth and professional development. We also make it a priority to maintain fairness and structure in our hiring and promotional processes. Again, this is ensuring that those processes and decisions are based on qualifications and not on protected characteristics. Things like keeping scoring systems standardized. In the promotions process, all of our scoring is what we call blind. So if there's written essays, things of that nature, the graders are reading them without any names attached to them. They're basically just seeing a blank Word document and scoring them objectively as not to create any bias. We try to assemble, when it comes to interview panels, because most of our assignments, promotions, and even recruitment and hiring processes involve some sort of panel interview. We always try to create panelists that are diverse and representative of the people who are applying for the position. So we try to have a female on every panel if possible. We try to have varying ranks and things like that to keep the panels kind of neutral and diverse. We maintain transparency in our communications with employees and prospective employees. This means, articulating and communicating job descriptions and requirements, criteria that need to be met for promotions, assignments, and new hires, so that there is no question at the end of the day as to what the expectations were, what requirements needed to be met in order to earn the job, earn the promotion, earn the assignment. As a department, we do promote inclusiveness. This means maintaining a workplace where employees feel valued, respected, encourage them to put in for other opportunities, succession planning, mentoring, things like that. It's not just about providing the opportunity, but it's about convincing the employee that they are worth something and they should strive to grow and develop professionally as well. So that's all part of that succession planning that we aim for. And then we also provide ongoing training and education. Some of that training and education is voluntary. A lot of it is mandated, both by state, under the California Post regulations, and also state, local, and federal laws that require us to participate in training. I'll throw up some numbers here. I know there's a lot there. I'll focus primarily on our staffing by gender. You can see on the sworn side, so these are police officers that are sworn police officers. We are 89% staffed with male police officers right now, 11% staffed with female police officers. For many, many years, we have put forth great effort into increasing our staffing with female officers. We have faced several challenges. First and foremost, female officers don't apply as much as male applicants do. So our candidate pool is far less when it comes to recruiting female police officers. Beyond that, we have experienced a lot of challenges when it comes to the physical agility testing that is required. A lot of the physical agility courses that are out there are demanding. They require a great deal of physical strength and also technique. And a lot of times we see that the biggest fallout for female applicants is that they are unsuccessful in the physical agility portion. And I'll get to that a little bit more in a second. On the non-sworn side, the females outnumber the males. So these are all of our civilian employees, our support staff, our dispatchers, records personnel, jail personnel. We are 80% female, 20% male right now. And on the right is our demographic breakdown of current employees at the police department. So as with most everything we do, we are governed by policies. And we have 4 specific policies that relate to equity, inclusion, and diversity. The umbrella policy is number 328. All of these are available on our website. And that is our discriminatory harassment policy. So this is under the umbrella of the city's administrative procedure that supports a workplace environment free from all forms of discrimination and discriminatory harassment. It outlines employee and supervisor responsibilities, training requirements, reporting requirements, and any investigation requirements that we may face as a result of report or allegation of discrimination. Our recruitment and selection policy also includes language on discrimination, and it supports federal, state, local laws that require us to provide equal opportunities for applicants and employees, regardless of protected class or characteristics. That includes race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, disability, marital status, things along those lines. Policy 1002 relates to evaluation of employees. So this is for our supervisors that are writing evaluations annually for all employees. This policy ensures that employees are evaluated in a non-discriminatory manner based solely on job-related factors and performance. And finally, 1004 relates to promotions and transfers. Again, it just ensures that our promotions, transfers, and assignments are decided in a non-discriminatory manner, and that promotional processes are fair and impartial based on job-related factors and performance. So training and professional development is a big part of this. Obviously, we are required, in fact, as a department, we just completed this. We just completed the mandated citywide training on anti-discrimination, and also all new hires are required to attend a city orientation that includes a module on anti-discrimination. Our police officers in the police academy actually attend 16 hours of cultural diversity training, which is one of the learning domains, and also 15 hours of people with disabilities training. All as part of the police academy, which did not exist when I went through back in 2004. We continue to provide ongoing in-service training. Most of that is state required, things like bias-based policing, communications, keeping your edge. These more relate to interactions with the public, but a lot of that crosses over to bias and discrimination in the workplace. And we also continue to send employees to conferences and training that are focused on ensuring equity in law enforcement. A couple of examples are the Women's Leaders in Law Enforcement, which right now we're currently recruiting interested applicants for that. They're submitting memorandums to Captain Lasacco. And also the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. We've sent plenty of police officers to that in the past. Some of our strategies in ensuring equity in hiring and advancement are to continue a robust recruitment campaign and expand outreach that promotes equity, diversity, and inclusivity. So it's the little things, right? When we advertise an event, if we post something on our social media, we try to demonstrate and show how diverse we are. It not only helps us in our recruitment efforts, but it affirms our commitment to remaining diverse in the community. We also implemented our recruitment plan back in 2023, which is also available on the website, that outlined several objectives and initiatives focused on equity and diversity. In fact, the first 2 objectives are entirely related to equity and diversity. And we continue to provide career development support both externally and internally by sending people to outside training opportunities and conferences like I just mentioned, but also internally ensuring that we provide mentoring, succession planning, promotional seminars, and most recently getting back to our challenges in recruiting female police officers. Our training coordinator and our background detectives developed a remediation program for female applicants who were not successful in the physical agility course. So what that involves is when a female applicant comes up to the range to do the monthly test and is unsuccessful, they follow up with them the following week and they make arrangements to meet them back at the range for some physical training. They show them some techniques and strategies on the course itself to help them be successful. And then they help them reapply so that once the 90 days have elapsed, they can take the course again. So in the past year, we had 4 female police applicants fail the PAT, and all 4 have since passed and are in various stages of the hiring process. And then finally, we want to ensure that we maintain a healthy workplace culture that promotes equality and inclusivity. So this is everybody's responsibility, especially supervisors, making sure that we keep a healthy work culture, zero tolerance for jokes and epithets and things of that nature. That's just part of it. And with that, I'll open it up for any questions you might have.
Lieutenant, thank you. Let me go ahead and open it up to our commissioners. Anybody want to jump in and start?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I work with the Burbank Human Relations Council, so this is pretty interesting to me. And I was very glad to hear that there is a blind process so that you're judging the person on their merit and character rather than on racial background or other. You mentioned something about with the 4 women who had not passed the first time. Is that same process followed for anybody if they had not passed the first time?
It could be. We have chosen to focus only on the female applicants over the past year or so because that's where we are falling short. And I think that for the most part, over the past year or so, the majority, I'd say over 95%, if I had to estimate, of male applicants have passed the physical agility course. So there are very few males that are failing that course.
You showed a screenshot of percentages of backgrounds. How does that match up with our demographics in Burbank?
It's close. There is a comparison on the website. I should have printed it up with me. It's current as of 2023, maybe 2024. I also submit an annual report as part of our CALIA accreditation that gives an update on that comparison. I did not bring those numbers with me, but it is close.
I'm real glad to hear your report. There's sometimes people will say that even though we have diversity, that is not based on merit. And I think you really put forward that merit is the primo, and it's blind, so it's not a problem. That works out very well. I'm glad you brought that up.
I'll jump in. Lieutenant, thank you again for presenting today. This is something that's been really important for me ever since some of us actually joined the commission a number of years ago. I want to thank the city council because the selection process that you went through 4 years ago to select the commission, both the expansion of the commission and the range of folks that are on the commission is reflective of that commitment of the city as well. So I just appreciate your willingness to do that. Lieutenant, I also appreciate your starting with the definition of equity because stuff's getting tossed around in the news and everywhere. And it's really good to go back to the basics so people understand what equity is in relation to equality and what it is in relation to other things. And so the equity piece, I'm thinking in particular, the example that you gave with the female candidates at the testing ground at the range to make sure that they have the opportunity to pass out. So that's a perfect example of equity and trying to create. It's not saying everybody gets treated the same, and it doesn't need to be everybody getting treated the same. But the fact that taking the time to try to lift people up. To give them those opportunities is really powerful. I've got a couple of comments I was going to make here, but I actually want to focus in on one thing that this is really an observation. Over the past few years, I've had the opportunity to interact with rank and file and with leadership within the department. And there's something that I've noticed. And I've actually first noticed it actually at the Community Academy a few years ago. And I've also seen it here for presentations for the Police Commission. Every once in a while, we get officers and we get leadership that's making a presentation that I don't know the delicate way to put this. You are extremely polished in your presentation, but we get some folks that are a little nervous in doing their presentation. And one of the things that I've gotten the opportunity to do in talking with some of the leadership is really get an understanding that the work that officers are doing when they come make presentations like this, you don't need this, you're doing fine. But it's the opportunity that I've seen leadership in the department be intentional about putting people forward, to give them the opportunity to make presentations, to prepare presentations, to put themselves in a position that might be a little uncomfortable, specifically to make sure that they have the opportunities to be seen, to put that on the resume, to strengthen an application for a promotion. It's not just a matter of numbers that we're talking about. It's the little things about really creating opportunity for others to really create equity across the department. I just want to acknowledge I've seen it. It's something that happens on a regular basis. It doesn't get talked about. Definitely doesn't get talked about
Yeah,
enough.
I appreciate that. As a young officer, I noticed that a lot of police officers are very well spoken.
Yeah.
And it's because they communicate with the public, and they need to be communicators. But you're absolutely right. Our department puts forth a lot of effort in providing people with
Yeah.
opportunities to
Yeah.
engage the public in public speaking roles. And it's not always a popular assignment, but whenever you see a new face up here, it's, yes, because they have some area of expertise,
Yeah.
but number two, it's because we're trying to develop them. And going back to Chief LaChasse, he implemented some sort of public speaking and presentation in promotional processes for sergeant and lieutenant. Again, not very popular.
Yeah.
Some people excelled, others did not.
Yeah.
But it's all part of our job here as communicators.
I appreciate that. I really do. Again, I want to emphasize what Mike just brought up about the the importance that there's no reduction in standards for all promotional opportunities, for all hiring opportunities. Three things that I talked about: the encouragement of historically underrepresented candidates is one. The second is all of the leadership, not just leadership, but all of the officers within the department, a willingness to openly engage others, regardless of difference, and really not just embracing diversity, and it's also not being colorblind either, but it's being very, I just appreciate that culture that we see outside in the community. My family members have noticed it as well. And then the third part is just, again, the coaching part, just the importance of the time that folks are taking to do the coaching, to engage, to really encourage people that otherwise might not necessarily be considering either promotional opportunities or in many cases hiring opportunities as well. So I thank you for that.
Sure.
Other comments? Mike?
I'd like to go back to your presentation. First, thank you very much for the presentation.
Sure.
But you used the 90 days in the physical agility test, that if you do not make it the first time, you don't get to try again for 90 days?
If you fail out of the hiring process at any point, so written, agility, or interview, you have to wait 90 days to reapply. That's in the job description, and it's a city rule. HR, MSD.
Yeah, it made me think, because yesterday there was an article in the news that the LAPD is speeding up their recruitment and hiring. And I'm just thinking, if we have a candidate who doesn't make it here, but yet right down a few blocks down, they can go and try there.
So there are some exceptions to that rule. There are some reasons where we can have somebody retest the following month. We've had situations where we have a lateral applicant from the sheriff's department who is a graveyard employee and cannot get off work, has to sleep all day. We will accommodate them, usually with approval through our chain of command and then the management services director. So there are instances where we do make exceptions, but for the most part, it is a 90-day rule.
Let me throw out a hypothetical. Somebody's taking the agility test, trips, bruises their knee. They're gone for 90 days, or?
Again,
We'll give it
case
to-
by case, we have had people injured up at the range. We do follow up with them as well, number one, to check on them. But number two, yeah, so if it's something that, they just bone bruise or something minor, that we can get them back into the mix sooner than later. The good news is that their written score is good for 12 months. So they do have some wiggle room, but like you're saying, if it's somebody that's in the process with neighboring agencies or agencies that we're kind of in a dogfight with, which it's always the same ones, it's Simi Valley, it's Glendale, it's Santa Monica, it's Beverly Hills, those are the big ones. Somebody's in the process with them, it's a race to the finish line. So yeah, there are certain exceptions we can make for those situations.
Am I wrong in thinking that a lot of candidates apply to multiple agencies at the same time?
The majority do, yeah. It's very rare that we find somebody that is solely in the process with just one agency or just Burbank, although we do have one right now. It's actually a female that did come out number one on the last testing round, and she is only in the process with us, so.
It sounds great, but let's ensure we have flexibility.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Lieutenant. I like the phrase coaching when you talk about the agility test, because a lot of that, from my experience with things like obstacle courses and stuff of that nature, sometimes it's coaching and training that it makes the difference, and the 90 days may not necessarily be necessary. Are there a lot of absolutes, or do we have a number of areas that can be improved on? I just heard you say that testing and things of that nature can be done again. So do we have a lot of absolutes or disqualifiers, or do we have things that are recoverable?
So what I can tell you is that probably about a year and a half ago, we evaluated our testing process. And we found that we believed, and word on the street was, that we had probably one of the hardest, if not the hardest, agility courses in the region here. We were hearing it from applicants. We were seeing it with our own eyes by going to other departments' websites and seeing what their agility course looked like compared to ours. What we didn't want to do is lower our standards, okay, because we have very high standards here in Burbank. And as much as we want to hire more females or, have more diversity, we don't want to lower hiring standards that have been set forth not just by us, but by the state of California to get people through the process. But we also understand that we have to adapt and evolve to the changing times. And we found that there were a couple of components in our agility course that were perhaps not as contemporary anymore. And we had the chief go up there in person, Chief Albanese, and he watched an entire day of test applicants running through the course, and he made his decision on what he felt needed to be tweaked. And we didn't necessarily make the course easier. We just made it more comparable to contemporary law enforcement, if that says anything. So yes, we are constantly evaluating our processes and making changes, and not just our testing for new hires, but also internally as well.
But along the lines of shooting for success, and I'm thinking of the Community Police Academy, is there any type of a prep program, maybe the weekend before they actually take the test, going up there and coaching them through? I mean, that's the word that I'm looking for.
So we've test driven this quite a few times. We used to do practice sessions at the range, and what we found is that we would be paying staff a lot of money to stand up there waiting for people to show up to practice the course, and we'd be lucky over the course of 4 to 6 hours if 1 or 2 people showed up. We have the video that's posted online. In fact, we're about to shoot a new video that's going to be updated with some of the changes we've made. And for the most part, the feedback we're getting from applicants is that once they get to the range, they feel familiar and comfortable with the agility course because they've watched the video. And we also do a complete walkthrough with them prior and give them ample time to ask any questions they might have.
So you feel like you've accomplished that with the video. How about finances? I know LAPD has like a 24-month window for bounce checks or anything of that nature, but again, it's recoverable. Is that the same? Do you have a window like that as well for someone who, as a younger person, made some economic mistakes or financial
Talk about
mistakes?
somebody's financial background or their credit, things like that.
Exactly.
There's discretion. But we always have believed that financial responsibility is representative of somebody's overall responsibility. So if you have somebody with poor credit that has revolving balances on multiple credit cards that show, at least on paper, that they're living beyond their means, you've got to look at that. And ultimately, the chief of police and his command staff, his or her command staff, has final say. As my unit, the background investigators, all they do is gather the facts, and then they present the facts to the command staff. But yes, finances are a big issue, and if you're saying 1 or 2 years, we probably, if it's bad, we probably would encourage them to reapply at a later time.
So with that, to our city council members, please don't make us go through the agility test, and please don't check our financial standing for commissioners. Don't, no. Romick, do you have anything? Okay. Leila, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, just to sleep here. Okay, yeah, so thank you for that
Sure.
presentation. And I just had a couple questions or thoughts, I guess. So I was glad to see in the staff kind of demographics slide that you all do collect information that is relevant to our community that goes kind of beyond the general which, you know, in one case would be like Armenian staff, right? And so I know as a data professional that that is not something that you can kind of disaggregate from census data and things like that. And so I appreciate that you all go the extra mile to collect data on that, since that's a large part of our community here in Burbank, and making sure that the department is, you know, representative in that way as well. And I also, you know, just to speak to, you know, the fewer women applicants, and I'm sure, obviously, you all have looked into this, and I'm sure people have researched about it, but just, you know, the idea that, right, everybody, to your point, Commissioner Coombs, or Chair Coombs, equity doesn't mean the same, everybody gets the same, right? So in the case of women applicants, right, there's been historical exclusion. You know, a woman who's considering applying, right, she may be less likely to know, or she would be, you know, less likely to know an officer who's female, right, to ask questions, to ask for advice, what's it like, all that kind of stuff, right? Including about maybe the agility course, right? So having that program to support women and, you know, be able to be successful is really great to see. And also just the idea that it's a really big job that you all do, just in general, but also, you know, it's a challenge, can be a challenging schedule, right? It can be really demanding. And for women who are frequently the default parent, right, that's going to be difficult to manage in a lot of cases. So just, you know, appreciating the effort to, you know, improve, you know, increase the number of female officers, but appreciating, you know, there are some challenges there. And so it's not a reflection of, you know, lack of effort on your part, and that's appreciated. And then I guess one other question I had was around some of the trainings that you mentioned. And I think, you know, we've seen there have been some, well, I guess I'll just ask the question. What is, or what are, if you can answer, what are kind of the funding sources for some of those trainings? Is it in this, you know, state budget? Are they, you know, grants? How does the department fund those?
Yeah, all of the above. We have a training budget. Each bureau or division within the department has a training budget allocated to them each fiscal year.
Yeah.
Beyond that, yes, we do procure a lot of training through grants. And the conferences, we have money set aside from that. And really, a lot of times we are not using that money. There are conferences where people are not putting in for, where we have to kind of nudge and say, hey, would be a good one for you to go to. Mm-hmm. And but we do, most of the funding does come from the budgeted funding for training.
Okay, so through the city budget, not through
Correct.
kind of grants and things like that.
Correct.
Okay. I just was wondering in terms of if there was something that was federal funding, whether that came through the state here or
It could,
that kind of
if
thing,
it's-
just in that
Yeah.
we've obviously seen there's been a lot of, you know, movement on federal funding for different things. So that was, but it sounds like maybe not the main source of
For this, like, training specific to equity and
Yeah,
diversity?
yeah.
I don't know of any off the top of my head that we have applied for, funding that we've received for those topics, but we do use grant funding and federal funding for other training.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, in the presentation earlier, there was means for relief. I think you said it was policy number 1001 through 1004.
Okay?
Two things. Is that often used? Do we have any kind of numbers if there
What, as far as what used?
any kind of relief that if someone felt an issue was working within the department or applying for a position, have there been any complaints that it wasn't up to par?
Like grievances?
So-
Somebody that
someone
was
who
not
didn't-
happy with the process based on their perception that it was they were
Yeah.
discriminated against?
Depending on their background, yeah.
I mean, those would be personnel matters, those would be reported confidentially, and I don't personally know of any allegations of that nature, and I don't know that I could discuss it even if I did.
That was the second question, is if there was, it would be internal affairs.
Yes, and I forget the name
Looks like
of the,
The answer, like most legal matters, is it depends. And so it could be an internal affairs, or
Yeah.
it could be something that's run through a lot of any sort of personnel grievances that have to do with processes, that might go through our management services department from the city.
Yeah.
But the answer is it depends.
That was
And,
my.
and to back up Lieutenant Green, if we did know about them, we wouldn't be able to talk specifics.
I want to just piggyback on something you were just asking as well. So just because I was thinking the same thing, that we were talking about the hiring processes, the equity and hiring processes. Those are departmental processes, but those are also city processes from
Correct.
management services. So there's a larger entity that you work within there.
Right, we have our criteria and we have our process, but we work under the
Yeah.
umbrella of the city management services department, who really dictates the way we do things.
Thank you. Ann, sorry, I didn't mean to skip over
No,
you.
that's okay. You do well. No. Thank you very much for
You're welcome.
your report. So my question goes way back in your report to the training, and I think I got some of an answer that perhaps it's hard to get officers to attend certain trainings? Or?
No, well, there's mandated training where they don't have a choice.
Right.
And the majority of training that pertains to these topics, diversity, inclusion, discrimination, those are all mandatory.
Okay.
For the most part. There are other opportunities that are voluntary, mostly on the conference side, which focus on improving equity and diversity and inclusivity within the law enforcement profession. And within those, you've been to Noble, so you know there's modules and there's different topics, and those are very beneficial. We've had a lot of interest on the women's leaders in law enforcement. I know I've personally accepted 3 memos, I believe, from people under my command, and I don't know how many others have submitted memos to Captain Lasacco. But the Noble and the Willie, we call it, conferences are both very popular amongst our employees.
My question was more along the lines of, in respect to the training and cultural diversity and people with disabilities, how often is that offered? Is it mandatory? Because that's certainly an area of change, both legally as well as...
So it is mandatory for all new police officers. I did not get the date that became effective, but I know it's been some time now. And those are what we call learning domains. You can actually download those online and read the entire learning domain. The officers are tested on that learning domain, so they must pass it. But yes, we could potentially and essentially take the content from those domains and incorporate it into our own internal training course.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Romit, go ahead.
More of a comment and then a question. First of all, Lieutenant Green, thank you so much for that presentation. It just kind of reconfirms the level of standard the Burbank Police Department holds. And, you get to talk to, like when you go to the NACO conference, I like to talk to everyone about their relationships with their local agencies. And whenever you talk about Burbank, it's always revered in some sense. And you quickly learn that obviously the quality of life that we have here is deeply tied to public safety. And what's really wonderful is that we get to see that, obviously, with the level of standard that we have, it's based on equity and also on merit, which is fantastic. But, just in general, like, how's recruitment going?
Well, it depends on what day you ask me. Recruitment is always, the first quarter of the new year is always tough, because at the end of the previous calendar year, we face a lot of retirements. We had some recent separations that were long-term disabilities that separated from the city. So we're at a little bit of a dip right now, but we are at 152 out of 160. So we're down 8 sworn positions, which, comparatively speaking with other agencies, we're still doing pretty well. We got within 1, which, since I assumed this assignment back in 2022, my goal was to be fully staffed at the 160 mark for the first time in as long as I can remember. In fact, I don't know that it's ever been done. And we got to 159, and then December came, and retirements, and so it's a challenge. It's not an annual challenge. It's a daily challenge. But we have a lot of promising applicants in various stages of the process right now that we're very excited about. We have 2 that just graduated the academy this past Thursday. We have 4 recruits that started this past Monday. One of them is one of the females that was unsuccessful previously in the PAT. So things are looking up.
Side note, I just recommend that working in institutions, don't hold yourself to that 160 mark because of exactly what you're describing. But I appreciate the energy there and the commitment to it. Any other comments that folks have? Ann?
I remember months back we had a conversation and we were talking about recruiting and in general that there was some apprehension perhaps around the country of wanting to join a police force. With that said, it seems like there's more applicants. I mean, every time I get on the City of Burbank Facebook, there's a picture of some potentially new candidates. Does it seem like things are improving?
We've seen, without hard numbers, we've seen the applicant pool double since probably early 2024.
And those aren't candidates. Those are
Right,
those are graduates that have already
they're
been
coming,
hired, and yeah,
right.
they're coming. Paul?
Just curious, how many languages do we consider we need to be fluent with in Burbank? And is that a factor in recruiting?
Absolutely, as many languages as we can find, because it being bilingual, trilingual is invaluable. Ms. Nakamura keeps a list of all of our bilingual employees, and when you look at it, I don't have it in front of me, but you'd be surprised at how many different languages our employees speak. And it would not be uncommon if we had a significant or serious investigation for us to rely on those employees, even though they're not police officers, because it's our non-sworn staff too, to use them for translation. So it is critical.
It's fantastic. Any other comments that folks have? Again, I just want to emphasize, just appreciate you starting with the definition of equity. There's a lot going on in the United States and the world right now. I just really appreciate that the department is lifting up, focusing on meeting the needs of the community and taking a look at the demographics of who we're serving, and that the department's trying to match that. So thank you for that.
Appreciate it. Good night.
All right, moving on. Get back to my page here. We're moving on to item G2, which is a presentation, discussion, and recommendations, if applicable, for an overview of the Communications Center. Captain Lasacco, welcome back.
Good evening, Commission.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. Captain Lasacco, I oversee the area that the Communications Center is in, so I'm here to talk to you about the Communications Center, if I can get the PowerPoint. So I'm going to start off with, this is a Communications Appreciation Week. So Telecommunications Week is the week that we get to thank all our dispatchers. Is very important that we recognize the great job that they do. They are behind the scenes 99% of the time, but from any police officer that's ever done the job, they will tell you that a good dispatcher, a good call taker in the comm center is invaluable. They are a lifeline in many cases. Sometimes you'll hear they will grab just a voice, not even a call sign. They will hear the tone of that officer's voice. They know who the officer is, they know where the officer's at, and they know that the officer needs some help. And it's happened to me where they will send help without even me asking, because they knew the sound of my voice was not the normal sound of my voice. So they are fantastic people, every single one of them. So we thank them. So our communications center answers all 911 calls into the center that happen from the city of Burbank or even sometimes nearby. I'll get into that in a little bit. And all non-emergency calls, that's commonly known here as the 238-3000. So when folks call 911 or they call 3000, 238-3000 from anywhere in Burbank and sometimes a little bit outside of Burbank, that call will come into our communications center. The same folks that you see in the photo there take both calls. So the same person that takes the 911 call could also be the same person that takes your 3000 call. The only difference is they're going to prioritize the 911 call. So when the 911 call is ringing, they will take the 911 call in order over the 3000 call, or they will put a 3000 call on hold while they answer a 911 call and determine if that's an emergency call or not. Because believe it or not, not all the 911 calls are truly emergency calls. The types of calls that they get in there vary from the barking dog to party calls to what time is it. A little trouble with the clicker here.
Needs over the communication center.
I might need you to.
Pretty well paid to do this. Training class though.
One more click. Click. So we get phone calls, like I said, from in the city, sometimes a little bit out of the city. From cell phones, there's a dynamic where the cell tower that the call hits on comes to Burbank, even though the call may be actually in North Hollywood, Glendale, somewhere on the freeway. So our dispatchers will triage those calls. They will determine where the person is calling from, where they need the help, and if they are outside the city or if they're outside the city or on the freeway where it's a CHP call, they will transfer that call as appropriate. They will stay on the call and determine that the connection was made. So they make sure that the caller has made connection with the next dispatcher. And while they're doing that, they will also stay on the call long enough to determine if Burbank Police Department resources are necessary. Sometimes there'll be something that happens on the border where it is an LAPD handle or Glendale handle, but we work very closely together, and we will oftentimes send our resources to a location, even though it's not technically a Burbank call. Also, they transfer all fire and paramedic requests to Verdugo Dispatch. So Verdugo Dispatch is a central location where I believe it's about 12 or 13 cities all contract with to have dispatch services for paramedic and fire services. They will do the same thing. They will ask if or determine if it's a paramedic or a fire call, and they will transfer it to Verdugo Dispatch, who will then get the information and dispatch the appropriate fire or paramedic resources. They will still stay on the line, determine if police resources are required. Very commonly, fire calls or paramedic calls do require police resources, and they stay on the call. They will get the information and still dispatch our folks.
There you go.
That was
Oh, it was you? Okay.
no, not working. So the 238-3000 is a de facto general information line. So 24/7 folks are calling into our dispatch center asking questions, very consistently asking all kinds of questions that may or may not be police related. Either way, the dispatchers will either provide the resources, phone numbers, websites, if appropriate, or even transfer those folks to the appropriate location. Go ahead. And then after hours, so in the middle of the night, our dispatch center is literally the de facto helpline for anything in the city. So if there's a tree down, if there's an animal shelter request, anything you can think of, power line issue, folks are calling 238-3000, and then our dispatchers are sending police resources if necessary, but also transferring those calls or making after-hour calls requests to phone numbers that they have, to Public Works, to Animal Shelter, or whatever the case may be.
And that's by design.
That's by design.
Okay.
Well, not the general information line. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, it is. It's
Yeah.
really the only 24/7 operation going on in town. But during the day, the types of calls that our dispatchers are dealing with are absolutely not within their scope, but they do a very professional job in dealing with it. Go ahead, sir. So our current staffing, we have 4 supervisors, 14 full-time communications operators. Go ahead. These folks are all on a 3/12 schedule, so they work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, days or nights, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, days or nights, and then we have what's called the payback on Sundays, where you work one Sunday a month in addition to your 3/12. Good. Currently, we have 4 full-time vacancies, and we have an ongoing recruitment with management services where once a recruitment closes, we get a list, and almost right away, a new recruitment is starting where we're trying to hire. Very much like police officer, it's very difficult to hire good people for this job. It's a very demanding job, multitasking to its highest level. It's very hard to get good folks that are able to first want the job and then actually be successful at it. It's very difficult. I personally have sat in there trying to do the job, and it is extremely, extremely difficult, and I don't want to do it, quite frankly. Go ahead. So currently we have 3 officers also assigned to the comm center,
and we have 6 as-needed communications operators that are part-time, if you will. They come in when they can, when we need them. So they're not on a schedule, but we will ping them up and say, hey, can you come work a shift? And they help us fill in. And most of those folks either were prior full-time dispatchers here and just want to stay full-time, or they work someplace else at another communications center and work here part-time. And those folks are really good. You're off the hook, sir. And a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago, in association or conjunction with Laz Parking, as you're aware, where you have the contracted parking, they also have a contracted person working in our communication center that takes the parking calls. So that's a load that has been removed from our full-time communications operators. They will get the call and then identify it is a parking problem. So during normal business hours, they will then transfer that call over to the Laz contractor who's sitting at one of our terminals, and she will handle the dispatching and entering and then clearing of that call. Takes a pretty good load off. As you know, a lot of our calls are parking related in town. We talked about the ongoing recruitment. You can go to our website and apply there, so I want to make sure I put a plug in. If you're interested in being a dispatcher with the Burbank Police Department, go to the website, apply, it's open now.
Which I think would make all of you ineligible to serve on the commission if you're working for a dispatch. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. Go ahead.
That was a good joke. There's a good joke in there, but I'm going to let it go. So incoming calls, so I'll give you a few stats here. We average about 38,000 calls a year. It's about 105 calls per day, 911 calls only. So those are the 911 calls that come into our center on a daily basis. They're triaged and dealt with appropriately. And you can see that over the last 5 years, the numbers are pretty steady. And doing a little math, it looks like even year-to-date this year, it looks like it's going to be in the neighborhood of what it has been for the last few years. So no real changes there. It's pretty steady on the numbers. These are all calls. So we're talking about almost 182,000 calls per year on average, about 500 a day. And again, pretty steady. It's a pretty big number there for us. And for it to stay steady is, just interesting. I don't know why or why not. We transfer about 12,500 calls. We talked about the calls that go to Verdugo. That's about 2/3 of the calls of that 12,500 that get transferred to Verdugo. The other third goes to CHP, freeway related, and then to LAPD, where we're talking about like Northeast Division, North Hollywood, and Foothill Division, which kind of border us. So we will have to transfer calls there. But for the most part, Verdugo Dispatch, like I said, takes about 66%. Text to 911, we get about 60 of those a month, so somebody can, on their cell phone, text to 911. If they're in the city of Burbank or near, our dispatchers will get that text, and they will either communicate with that person again by text through a platform we have on our desktops, or they have on their desktops, or they will actually make the phone call to that number if they deem it's appropriate. This is what real impressive to me is the ring times. So 94% of all those 911 calls that you saw get answered in less than 10 seconds. If anybody has tried to call 911 anyplace else, you sometimes can't even get through, much less get a 10-second answer. Some of these calls are answered within 2 or 3 seconds, but 94% under 10. And if you go to 15 seconds, you have 98% of our calls are answered in under 15 seconds. For all calls, interestingly enough, 0 to 10 seconds, 95%. So if you call 238-3000, there's a 95% chance that that call is going to get answered in less than 10 seconds. Again, I want to thank the dispatchers for their great work.
Can you go back two slides, actually? So 0 to 10 seconds of the 911 calls are 94%, but there's actually a higher number of the 3,000 calls. Okay.
You got the logistics are kind of weird. So when we get a major incident, you might get 20 911 calls for one incident.
Okay.
And the ability for humans to answer and deal with all those calls at the same time, it becomes difficult. So they have to triage those calls and take them up. So the stats there are kind of, could be misleading.
Okay.
In that sense, because it's an average, right? So for every average, there's outliers on both sides. So it's real stressful in there when it happens on accidents a lot, traffic accidents, on major collisions. You may get 10 or 15 911 calls from folks, and the dispatchers are triaging those calls. Who's the most important person, who has the most information? They still want to get their information because if there's a crime involved in that, it's very important that our detectives are able to follow up with somebody that was potentially a witness. So it takes time to deal with all that and then still deal with what the emergency is.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I know I've got some questions, but I want to open it up to our commissioners. What questions you might have. Mike, you want to start? And then we'll go to Ann.
Sure. Thank you for your presentation. We had one of the people from that department, that area of the department, give a presentation years ago. And I don't think you can stress enough the amount of stress that is in that job. You have to have such a range of emotions that's going on and have to be able to respond quickly to them all. And they all deserve plenty of recognition. On one particular question I have it was not presented here, but if someone calls from outside of Burbank, and in this particular situation, it was a business owner that I know, and his business came into a situation where he had to call the police. And he's in North Hollywood on the line, but he called the Burbank police. How does that transfer go on? Does the person say, oh, you're at the wrong address, hang up and you got to call the other? How does that work through?
So one of the first things our dispatchers do when they take the call is they figure out where the person is. So if in your case, it would have been on the other side of Clybourne, for instance, is where his business is, and he's reporting a break-in that happened last night. They would, in most cases, transfer that call directly to LAPD. So they would push a couple buttons on the screen through their mouse, and that call would go to LAPD, and they would make sure that connection was made, and then hang up the line. The other option is just give them the phone number. Hey, listen, this is an LAPD handle. Here's the phone number, 818, whatever the case may be. You can call there. So those are the two options.
So it's very specific to the boundary of Burbank. We would not respond to a call outside of Burbank. We would transfer.
Generally speaking, we would not respond to LAPD's jurisdiction to take a report call on a crime that occurred in Los Angeles with no nexus to Burbank. With every rule, though, there's an exception. So if you're about to give me the exception, let me hear it and I'll tell you.
I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann, go ahead.
Is there ever a time when there are two operators at the, first of all, congratulations on dispatch day. I can't imagine doing that job. Absolutely. So the question is, also thank you for your report.
Sure.
The question is there ever a time when there are two operators at the center, one on the 911 line and one answering the 3000 line?
So generally speaking, we have 3 to 4 folks on duty at any given time, preferably 4. One is handling our primary radio channel as the dispatcher. So that would be if you're listening to the radio, you would hear the dispatcher speaking. That person's job is only to talk on the radio, both dispatching calls and or repeating what officers might be saying or answering questions that the officers might have on the primary channel. That's going to be their job. That's what they do. Then there are 2 other people that are taking phone calls and also monitoring the backup channel. So we have secondary and third and fourth, fifth channels that may require some sort of communication. So their job is to handle both 911 calls and to handle the 3000 calls and then monitor the backup channels where there's no real emergency traffic.
Okay.
So we will have, to answer your question directly, there's generally 2 people taking calls from the 911 or the 3000 number. And then the fourth person would be a backup for everybody.
Great. I saw one person in the picture and I thought, oh my
She's really good.
Oh, geez. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Layla, go ahead.
Yeah, just one question. Thank you for that presentation, and echo other folks' sentiment it must take a very special person to be able to do that job successfully and for any length of time. So we appreciate them. I noticed on the slide about staffing, you said there were 3 officers. Was that 3 sworn officers that were assigned? Is that the usual way of things, or is that because, as you mentioned, you're a few operators short?
We're just leveraging resources. Folks sometimes are injured, have a light duty type scenario, and they've been trained in there. So other folks, and more that, I didn't put it on the slide, but there's a number of sworn individuals who are trained in the communication center and will pick up shifts in there as needed. So once that happens, they're trained up, they're good to go. They happen to get injured and they're trained, or they get injured and we train them. It's a good use of our resources to put them in there. They have the ability to answer calls with very little training in addition to what they had as far as the communication goes. The training for them is more of the physical, how do you enter this? What does this look like? How do you put this here? How do you move that there? How do you transfer the phone call to LAPD? It's more mechanics, but once they're in there, we leverage that resource to be very useful. So it just happens to be that there's 3 folks, sworn officers that are in there right now on a semi-permanent basis.
Okay, that's all.
Let me rephrase that, on a temporary basis.
Right. So it could be dependent on the dispatch need or the officer's need if there's an injury or something
Correct.
like that. Okay, thank you.
I'm going to jump in and then I'll go to Romik. So I've got this isn't a gotcha, but there's a math issue here that I just want to lift up because this is something that we may want to just name, and I'm curious if you were talking about using overtime with officers that may be assigned that aren't light duty or something like that. There's 4 supervisors, and then there are 14 operators, positions for 14 operators. To have 4 operators on at any given time, you actually have to have 20 operators throughout the week.
I would like to have 4.
So I just wanted to lift that up, just naming, having dealt with 24-hour operations in the past. So I was just concerned about that we're light on the operators, and we're actually light on a supervisor as well. And that's not accounting for sick or vacation or anything like that. So I just wanted to name that and acknowledge that the job is hard enough, but it sounds like there might be some staffing challenges associated with that as well. Just like we were talking about with having 152 out of the 160 sworn officers in the department, there's always going to be those coverage issues. But I just wanted to name structurally that there might be a challenge there. I just wanted to.
There's no doubt a challenge.
Okay.
There's always staffing challenges.
Okay.
So there's 4 supervisors. We have 4 shifts. So we have a Monday day shift,
Okay.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday day shift that has a supervisor. We have a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night shift that has a supervisor, and then the same thing on the Thursday, Friday, Saturday. There's a day shift and a night shift supervisor. So that's the 4 supervisors.
That's the 4, and then
Sundays
I'm
are
missing a
paybacks.
day.
So Sundays are paybacks.
Okay.
So to make the 312 work,
Okay.
you have to work an extra day a month.
Okay, gotcha. I know okay. It makes sense now.
Okay.
It's like, this is why nurses have this figured out. Nobody else has it figured out because they do the same thing. So thank you. Yes, math is a problem for me. And again, just appreciation for our communication staff and everything, and appreciate that we get to lift them up a week a year. Probably should do that more. We had talked before here about wellness programs for officers, and Mike, you had lifted up, and I think Ann, you'd made reference to the stress that that dispatchers can experience. How does the wellness program interface with the folks that work in communications?
The wellness program is across the board for all
Okay.
our folks,
Great.
both sworn and non-sworn.
Okay.
So it's definitely inclusive of the dispatchers on the non-sworn side of the house. But you're right, the dispatchers have a lot of stress, and sometimes it's not as obvious and noticeable because they're not actually seeing.
Right.
And the reality is that sometimes that could actually be worse than seeing, because they're imagining and hearing about these traumatic cases. And, some of them come to mind where we had to make sure that we went back and gave those folks resources that they needed for instant events, notwithstanding the general wellness of the ongoing. But sometimes we have those very instant cases where we need to make sure that we're taking care of the officers, which are obvious, but we have these behind the scenes folks, if you will, that we need to make sure that we're also looking out for. And we're about to embark on a new wellness program, or some wellness stuff coming up here pretty soon. So they're definitely included.
Fantastic. Last question, then I'll turn it over. Can you talk a little bit about the testing process for recruiting for dispatchers?
So there's a written test, typing test, where a lot of people, believe it or not, cannot get through that program. So they have this type written test, and it's not very arduous. I think it's like 40 or 50 words a minute. So, that's not a lot, but it's still, without making errors, it's a decent amount. Then there's an interview portion, application interview portion. So you look over their application, what's their work history, that type of thing. Then there's the oral interview. Then there's a background process. And if I didn't mention it earlier, the dispatchers are post-certified, just like police officers are. So there's a standard that we can't just make up. We have to actually follow post standards to make sure that they are able to get through a background.
Is there a simulated dispatch? Is there a simulated dispatch call receiving part of the test at all?
Well, once they get here, they are going to go through at least 6 months of training.
Okay.
Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, and there is plenty of that type of training going on. And not everybody makes it through that process.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Romit, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Captain Lasacco, thank you so much for that presentation, and just a big thank you, and I commend the communication staff. From the age of 15 to 22, I worked in a call center, so answering 50 to 100 calls a day, but it was on the technical support side. So this is essentially the most difficult customer service job that they have, just servicing the community. And with that, what's the current turnaround as far as the lifespan of an employee working in that position? Is there?
Lifespan or
Not lifespan,
work
but-
career
sorry,
span?
sorry.
Okay.
Work span.
Thank you.
Work span.
So you're talking about tenure, essentially?
Yeah.
I mean, it runs the gamut. We got folks that have been in there for, one lady started before I did, so she's got, pushing 30 years. And then we have folks that, decide after 5, 7, 8, 9 years that it's not for them. A lot of times we get folks that are about to start a family, so they might work into their early 20s. They decide they're going to start a family, they'll go on leave, and leave is much better than being at work, and they decide, the other half of the relationship is working, I'm going to stay home. And what we've seen is that kind of happens, and then they'll come back and be temporary. And then we had one recently that left, came back temporary, and then came back full-time. So there's a little bit of, that happens.
I'll turn around.
So, but to answer your question, as far as tenure, it varies. Everything from 30 years to, we have a couple people on training right now.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you so much for that. So that kind of leads into, and this is just a tech nerd and me asking these questions. AI, is that a conversation at all? Because I know that as we move to the world of automation, is there anything in the horizon as far as police departments, like having automated, is that possible?
So from our perspective, AI is not where it needs to be to where we can use it yet.
Yeah.
Potentially later on as the technology gets better, but there are pushes in our industry to start using AI, and so far what we've seen is that it's not ready for the big time. It's not ready for the big leagues. But potentially, it's like the drone and helicopters, right?
Sure.
Today, drones are not replacing the helicopter, but at some point in the future, there's a chance that that's going to happen.
Thank you.
Cool. Paul, we'll go Paul and then Mike.
This is kind of a how did it happen in an attaboy. And it's, I will tell you flat out, the reason I live in Burbank. I was on the other side of Riverside Drive in North Hollywood, and someone was not breathing on the street. Someone called 911. That's just generic 911. We're definitely in North Hollywood. Burbank Fire came over and took the man out of my arms 4 minutes before LA Fire got there. How would that happen? Did they intercept the call? They just told me they knew they could get there faster. And they came, which was just, like I said, above and beyond the call of duty. In 4 minutes, we both know when I'm clearing the airway is death. But do we just see calls like that and we jump in, or how does that work?
Without knowing the specifics of that call, the fire department does work a little bit differently than we do. They work a little more regionally. So you will commonly see Burbank Fire rigs outside of the city of Burbank answering calls for service. If they are closer, if the station potentially that was responsible for that area was out on another call, they could get dispatched to a call that may not necessarily be in the city of Burbank. Oftentimes, mistakes are made where people say they're at Riverside and Pass when they're really at Riverside and Lancashire, right? Or something like Foreman. Like Foreman's just outside the boundary there. And someone might have said they were at Clybourne, so they're going to send the folks, well, when our fire department gets there and they see there's an emergency, they're going to deal with it, right? Regardless of the geographic boundary. So, but the fire department does work a little bit differently, and they're really good at working in partnership and regionally with other cities and other departments. They're not as bound by geographic boundaries as we are.
Just to end with that, I've spent, of the years I've lived in Burbank, I've spent 3 of those years away. And this was what gave me comfort for my family, knowing that this was the response rate. So thank you very much for reinforcing it.
Well, thank you. Mike?
Let me ask the hard question. When was the last time dispatch was at full strength?
I don't know.
Also, another question. Do you ever get swatting calls from
Yes.
outside the area?
What do you mean outside the area?
That in other situations, they can be from another state, but somehow they get in. I mean, if you're just,
So someone from another state calls and says there's an emergency in the city of Burbank?
Right.
Yes, absolutely, we get those calls. I don't want to say regularly, but we've had numerous.
Also, most phones now are cellular. So if a call comes in, the geography is created by the cell tower location, not by the area code.
Correct.
So you could have somebody who with a 714 Orange County cellular number, but they are in Burbank. So the cell tower is going to create the call to the correct 911 center.
Generally, yes. There's, you saw 12,500 calls got rerouted to other places, with a third of those going to CHP, LAPD, and other jurisdictions that were not Verdugo dispatch. So by definition, most of those calls were from outside of, someone needed help outside of Burbank.
Yeah, in my former life, when I worked for the phone company, and I know that the phone company sells services to police departments for 911 dispatch,
We work very closely with them.
and they're always trying to sell you new software. And new software, of course, comes with new bugs. So there's a whole process, but so much of it is geography related. And with cell phones, it makes it even more difficult.
The technology's gotten much better. We used to get calls from all over the place, and if you remember when cell phones first came out, if you called 911 from your cell phone, it automatically went to the CHP. And it would never come to our dispatch center. It would go to CHP, and then it would then get transferred to our dispatch center, which greatly increased our response times from the initial phone call.
One bit of information a dispatch operator here in Burbank gave me, which was really helpful, is tell the dispatch person the color of the street sign. If it's green, they're in Burbank. If it's blue, they're in LA.
That used to work 100% of the time, but not anymore.
What a world we're living in.
So, actually, we've had presentations on the communication center in the past, and I'm actually, if commissioners haven't, I'm really going to encourage you to take a tour of the communication center as well. It's an impressive operation, and to see what they're doing is really impressive. I want to encourage you to do that. I could swear sometime in the last 4 years we were having a similar presentation, and the calls, the cell calls were going to CHP first and then coming to Burbank. Was that in the past few years, or was it longer ago than that?
I mean, it's been quite a few years.
It's been quite a while.
Okay.
The technology's progressed.
Okay.
If you wind the clock back 20 years, probably all of them were going to CHP.
Okay.
And then it slowly has gotten better as the cell tower
Okay.
geography and the triangulation has
Okay.
gotten better. But in the last 5 years, I'd say everything's coming based off the cell tower location.
Okay.
But
Paul?
then that question came up a couple years ago, I think, to this commission. The person who called 911 from the Home Depot parking lot, I think that call went through CHP, but they said it was because of the proximity of Home Depot to the 5 freeway. So but yes, and the other, because years ago, when I was a realtor, I used to put out 238-3000, and even when I went through Leadership Burbank, everybody said dial 911, and I said no, 238-3000, because back in the day, that's where it would have gone to. But it's the value of a home phone is your address comes up on a landline, where it doesn't necessarily come up with a cell phone. But that has been greatly improved.
Appreciate that. One last question from me, because I know this was a hot issue about a year or so ago, and I was thinking about the dispatcher that's focused solely on the radio traffic with the field. My understanding, we went to encryption year and a half ago, something like that, and there were some real concerns about that information becoming publicly available, and there's some local folks that were really concerned about that, and there were hobbyists that were really concerned as well. But now my understanding, and this actually comes from another source in the community, is that there's now some sort of a reporting out system, so that communications between the dispatcher and the field is now more readily available to news sources and whatnot. Does that sound familiar at all?
So I think you're speaking of Broadcastify.
Yeah.
So basically, that is a streaming service.
Okay.
That we take our primary dispatch channel and we stream it on a 15-minute delay.
Okay.
So that is out there and available.
Okay.
We also have the option during a tactical operation. So we had one right out in front of City Hall last week with a gentleman that was being provocative, where we can shut that off.
Okay.
And then bring it back up.
Okay.
But yes, so yeah, we do stream that on a 15-minute delay.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Layla?
Just to close a loop, maybe, on the cell phone question. So I know some folks, including myself, when I'm at home, I don't have a landline. When I'm at home, my phone is on the Wi-Fi, not on a cell tower. So does that operate the same way? It's kind of based on maybe where that, your IP address is registered to, right? Because I have internet service, or how do those calls?
So that's going to work, I believe, similarly to the VoIP, the Voice over Internet Protocol. You're supposed to set up, when you get your phone, you're supposed to set it up with your home address. So it should show us where you're at. And also the technology has gotten pretty good where even if you're not doing it through the internet, it will still show us a pretty good, very small radius of where you might be, whether or not it's your exact address or not. But when you get your cell phone, you should hook it, you go through the steps to include where your home address is.
Thank you. Good question. Any other questions folks have?
So if you say to 911, I'm at home, then they can look it up from that point.
Well, no, it would just say the address, and they would
Address
ask
will
you,
come
confirm you're at 1234 Main Street.
Actually, this is an adjacent question, but I'll try to keep it focused on this. Romick and I got a chance a couple months ago to go ahead and tour the Glendale Police Department. We were invited to come over and do that, and I know they've developed a new, is it an information center? What did they call it?
Real-time crime center?
A real-time crime center it was adjacent to, sort of attached to their communication center. Do we have anything like that in the works?
In the works. It's a long-range plan. There's a lot of things that go into doing that. One of the first things we're trying to do is get video. So where we have the ability to watch hundreds of video feeds at any given time, starting with city video feeds. So we're trying to work that out, but all of that takes space.
Yeah.
It takes technology, and it takes staffing.
Yeah.
So you can have all the bells and whistles, you can have all the stuff coming in, but if you don't have folks paying attention to it, looking at it, dealing with it, acting on it, deciding what's important and what's not, it's not useful information. So I would say in the beginning stages of looking at that, funding is also an issue. So staffing and funding probably, and space, are the things we need for that.
Will that be attached to the communication center, or will that be a separate kind of entity or team?
It will be the way we're looking at it now, it will be loosely attached to the communications center, but there will be, it's going to take some sort of team of folks.
Okay.
What that actually looks like is still, a ways off.
Okay. And when we were talking, a few months ago, we were talking about, I think we were talking about the 2035 plan, and we were talking about projections for staffing, and all of this, I'm assuming that all gets rolled into that planning process.
And just to add to that, it was a great tour, but also one thing that we also encountered was the live footage, having the ability to have the live footage all throughout the community. I know that reckless driving was a part of our conversation where, if somebody witnessed someone doing donuts or doing something illegal in the street, they were able to pull that footage, actually validate the fact that that did absolutely occur and actually cite that person, which is really unique. So it can really help crack down on reckless driving as well. So. Yeah.
So something to look forward to in the future.
Yeah, right.
With hopefully with more resources to be able to do that. So, any other questions that folks have for Captain Lasacco? Captain, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you being here with us. All right, we are moving on to item G3, which is presentation, discussion, and recommendations, if applicable, of the Pedestrian Safety Ad Hoc Subcommittee report. That's a mouthful, and I know. And we are going to turn it over to Layla.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try to keep it short. So you should all have a copy of what I put together. There's also some at the front by the door, but I'm not going to read this. I'll just kind of hit the highlights here, which are, one, just to say thank you to the department for gathering and sharing the data. I know it's a lot easier said than done to say like, oh, just give me the data for the last 4 years. Like it's a lot goes into that. So I appreciate that. And I hope I did my best with this. So, and hopefully, there'll be some helpful information that comes out of it. So, overall, the data covered January 2020 to May 2024. So just kind of get an idea of what kind of time frame we're talking about. And during that time, there were, looking at this data, there were 384 collisions that involved either cars and pedestrians or cars and bicyclists. And so first I just want to share that out of all of the collisions involving cars and pedestrians, looking at the at-fault, assigned by the officer, that was 74% of those collisions were caused by drivers. That was the designation, right? So that's 3 out of 4 of those collisions. And so among those collisions, in about a third of them, the primary collision factor was the driver's violation of pedestrians' right of way. So that could be something like, I imagine, someone's crossing the street, right? And the car is not yielding to the pedestrian. And in about 1 out of 5, roughly, there was no specific vehicle code provided. It just was other improper driving. So we don't have, that was the second most common, I think, and wasn't too specific, but I wanted to include that here. And, it may just be that sometimes it's difficult to figure out exactly what, vehicle code something related to, but there was some mistake made, right, by the driver and resulted in an injury and a collision with a pedestrian. And so based on that, I, created this recommendation. And so I'm just sharing all these recommendations with the commission to see if, some or any of them, we all agree on, and then we can, kind of maybe formally or informally, we're sharing obviously with the department here tonight, but, if we agree on them and make them more of a, an official recommendation, right? So I'm recommending that education and enforcement efforts to reduce pedestrian injuries and fatalities should focus, for the most part, or more so, on drivers who are causing 3 out of the 4 of these type of collisions, and to focus on all types of driver safety, but in particular on, again, yielding, and to pedestrians in marked and unmarked crosswalks. And we know that the rules around crossing the street at crosswalks and not official crosswalks has changed recently. So there may be some, more education needed for drivers on that, as well as obviously, pedestrians need to be responsible as well. But looking at, who was at fault in these collisions, it seems a little bit more on the driver's side. So that's the first recommendation. Second finding was that out of all the collisions that involved cars and bicyclists, drivers were at fault about 41% of the time, so a little bit less than half, meaning, bicyclists were determined to be at fault for a little more than half of these collisions. And in about 1 out of 5 of these types of collisions, where the bicyclist was at fault, the primary factor was violation of right of way relating to entering or crossing a street, right? So maybe bike kind of cut across an intersection without stopping or something like that, right? And there was a collision with a car. And then again, in about another fifth of 1 out of 5 of these collisions, the driver was at fault for the same reason, right? So maybe there was a bicyclist and the car just kind of went through the intersection, right, and collided with the car. So on that one, my recommendation is that education and enforcement efforts to reduce bicyclist injuries and fatalities should focus on both drivers and bicyclists, since they're each responsible for about half of these collisions. And then again, a focus around intersections. Not surprising, there are a lot of collisions at intersections, right, versus other places. But so that's the second piece. The third one is I looked at kind of geographically where are a lot of these collisions happening, calling them hotspots, if you will. And so looking at that, and it required a little bit of, it's an imperfect analysis, let's say, because it required a little bit of data cleaning in terms of, some collisions might be assigned to, Glen Oaks and Buena Vista, and another one might be Buena Vista and Glen Oaks. So I had to do a little bit of, data cleaning to try to, get those two collisions, right, to be kind of assigned to the same location. So there's a little bit of that, but again, did my best trying to make sense of that. And it turns out that the Empire Center parking lot had the most driver and pedestrian or bicyclist collisions. And maybe, that's not that surprising to some of us, unfortunately. And the Costco parking lot had the second most of these types of collisions. And then from there, then it went to, I kind of tried to aggregate a little bit around streets and sort of strings of intersections that had sort of clusters of these types of, collisions. And so Glen Oaks Boulevard was another one. If you look at Glen Oaks between East Providencia and East San Jose, so that is a very high risk area for pedestrians and bicyclists. And Glen Oaks Boulevard, in fact, had 3 out of the top 5 intersections with the most collisions. So that is a real area of concern. And I'll just say on that one, if you have the time and you are brave enough to go all the way through this report, you will find in a later page, there is a list of the, page 4, where a list of intersections or parking lots, in some cases, that had the most collisions. And on page 5, where I sort of aggregated it to sort of more of a street level, right? So Glen Oaks, Hollywood Way, that kind of thing. And then lastly, on page 6, there's a little map I put together. So you can see where are those intersections. The legend was too big, so it's on the next page, which is bad map making design, but was necessary in this case because the legend is very big. So there you go. So if you want to dig into that. But I'll say my recommendation on that one, again, given what we know, limited staffing that we have, again, just education and enforcement efforts to reduce these type of injuries, focus on more so on these hotspots that have been identified. And I don't know, the exact ins and outs of how enforcement happens in a parking lot of a private business per se, right? So I don't know if that's, here I thinking it's maybe more of a collaborative effort with the property manager, they have security there and those kind of things. So however that, may be. But I know sometimes there are, I'm remembering the example of, is it Raising Cane's, where they had to hire security and do traffic measures right there to facilitate any kind of traffic issue. So I know the city sometimes can either suggest or maybe require, I don't know, further enforcement in those locations that are high-risk areas for folks. And then the last one I'm going to point out is the school drop-off and pickups. There have been a lot of concerns from folks that I've heard and talked to, and myself included, having 2 kids at schools here. So, there were about 54 collisions during this time involving school-aged children during those drop-off and pickup times, which I lay out what those hours are. I kind of devised those timeframes myself. It's not like an official time, but just based on when did this, when's the earliest school start, when does the latest school let out, and when do they get in, and so on. And I just kind of created windows based off of that. So although, 54 out of 384 total collisions, is only about 14% of those collisions. Again, we have heard anecdotally that there is probably some underreporting there, and that could be, because kids sometimes might be hesitant to report that, right? Because one, that might make them late for school, and they, have been impressed upon them, don't be late for school, right? Unfortunately, even in this situation, they may, kids, that's kind of how kids think, or they would be concerned about maybe being, believed versus the adult who's the driver saying, oh, no, that's not what happened, or, that kind of thing, right? Sometimes that's, that does happen sometimes, right? We discount what, kids or things like that. And two, just, yes, getting in trouble or getting blamed for the collision. And even if it is their fault, we would want them to come forward and tell someone, right? Obviously, in case they're injured or something, right? So never mind the statistics, but we would want kids to feel comfortable doing that and feel safe to do that. So, so on that one, my recommendation was just to, for the department to partner with schools to increase, again, education and enforcement around schools, especially at those busy times during drop-off and pickup, and to ensure that, and this maybe the school may be the better messenger, but making sure that kids know and families know that they can and they should safely report any collisions to school staff or the department, or obviously, 911 if there were any kind of serious injury or any injury, right, involved. So I will leave there. That was a lot.
Layla, thank you. I
I'll
appreciate
let
that.
y'all digest that.
I have some responses, but before we go there, who all served on the ad hoc committee with you to do this work?
This I did myself.
Okay.
There were in the past some
Okay.
other members, but this I did.
Okay. So I just want to acknowledge, first off, this has been a 4-year focus of yours on the data and the analytics and everything, and it's actually really exciting to see this come to fruition. It started with a real interest in the data, and then it led to the formation of the ad hoc, learning how to do ad hoc subcommittees, the formation of it. So this 4-year focus has been impressive. The second is, and I want to lift up a couple of things here. The second is through this process over the last 4 years, you worked closely with the department to develop a data request process. And I know there were some bumps in the road, but with the work that you and Captain Kremens did together, and you give him acknowledgement in this as well, you put a process in place to make this happen, which is a tool that we can all utilize and work with. Yeah. So I really appreciate, because there were lots of challenges I know that you'd experienced in this, but this report brings it to fruition. The third is I just want to acknowledge the Burbank Police Department and the work that you've done, because as a department, as an institution, there was some pushback early on about asking for data. We've been talking about what data is available to us on the website, what information do we have access to. There were moments where there were issues about asking for data was creating an undue workload on the department and taking away resources, and that is as opposed to allowing that just to be a conflict and a disagreement, it was worked through. And so I just really appreciate the department's doing that. I'm thinking about bicycles right now and e-bikes, and I'm not going into an e-bike discussion. I'm not going into an e-bike discussion right now.
This is outdated for that reason, right?
Not going into an e-bike discussion. However, one of the things that I'm aware of with this report and with what happened with the e-bike discussion is that we saw a debate in the community with e-bikes about whether e-bikes should be banned, period, and which wasn't what we were advocating for. I just want to lift up something that the data, the way it's reported out here is fantastic. If we were to follow the recommendations of the data, we would be considering banning cars from the city of Burbank. And obviously we're not going to do that. So I just want to point out the importance of how we use data and how we apply data. So just really appreciate that piece. The last thing I'd like to do, and I'd like to jump into this now. I know I'm kind of bogarting the conversation. I'd actually like to make a motion right now to move that these recommendations be moved to the Burbank Police Department for consideration. You've done the work, you've laid it out.
I'll second that.
So I've got a second from Paul. All in favor of moving these recommendations to the Burbank Police Department? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Any nays? One nay. Any abstentions? All right. So that moves forward. The recommendation is that we move these recommendations to the Burbank Police Department for consideration. So thank you for that. This was a labor of love and a job well done. So I want to open it up. Any other questions or comments
Yeah,
that
I
folks
just
have
want to
about
say
the
I'm
report?
happy to answer any
This
questions.
is-
Thank you for your vote of confidence in me.
Well,
So,
because it's
answer any
dated to
questions.
2024.
Yes.
We learned I believe it was in our last meeting, that effective 2025, I believe e-bikes are actually vehicles. So is that whatever state was made that at some point in time, for accident reporting, I thought we were told that e-bikes were going to be considered vehicles instead of bicycles.
The vehicle code considers like any conveyance of vehicle, so a regular bicycle is considered a vehicle.
And I
The
must-
the e-bikes, I think they are getting their own separate carve out in some of the data reporting. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to.
Maybe that must be what I misinterpreted then. Thank you. But I just want to say thank you, because this is exactly along the lines of what we've been asking for, and as you point out, I know Captain Cremens was a real numbers guy, and there's perception and there's numbers, and I think this validates perception, and especially the regions. Some of the numbers, like the number of accidents on Chandler, I don't think people necessarily realize what a thoroughfare that is. But thank you, and like I said, I just wasn't sure whether or not the reclassifications of e-bikes was going to change the numbers. But my thought was that it was forward, so not after that, not with this anyway. I will stop now.
Thank you, Paul. Other comments folks have about Layla's presentation and the report? We'll go with Romick and then Mike.
I still remember when Layla first brought this conversation forward, so thank you so much for all the incredible work that you've been doing. The only question I have is, as far as like some of the recommendations, is any of this even being done at the department right now?
Yeah, I should say that these are recommendations, and based on my analysis here, I know that, the department looks at all kinds of
Sure.
things, right? But understanding that they may have more limited capacity because they have a much broader purview than me.
Sure,
So
sure.
I, went ahead and did this, and my recommendations are not to say that none of this is,
Being done.
right?
Just to address some of it, we obviously recognize Glen Oaks as a hot spot. And that area between San Jose and Providencia is known because you have so much dense housing on both sides of Glen Oaks. There's a lot of pedestrian back and forth there. That's a focus. Glen Oaks has always been a focus, especially for speed. We work quite a bit with the schools. I'm not surprised at all that the Empire Center and Costco are top of the list for pedestrians, but that is a challenge because you have uncontrolled space there. And you don't have clear lanes, clear walkways. It's just a mishmash of people on cars and bikes, and most of that is going to be governed by private property rules, where we're not patrolling and enforcing the vehicle code there. But we can absolutely talk with the property management there. We're in contact with the property management at Empire Center on a couple projects right now, so we can get their feel for what they can do. But I appreciate the recommendations, and we are addressing a lot of this stuff. And our traffic bureau is facing its own staffing challenges, so we hope to have them in a better position by this time next year. Thank you.
Awesome. We did Romick. Mike, you wanted to say something, and then we'll come over to Mike.
A lot of all our recommendations are education. Start with the word education. There are groups in Burbank, one particular one that does a lot of bicycle for adults and children, bicycle club. And I wondered have you ever contacted them about any teaching bicycle safety, maybe even giving a certificate or something? I don't know. The members of the bar, are like bicycle owners, but they're also a part of an association. And maybe the association of the bicycle clubs could develop, under the auspices of the police department, some kind of training and education or something like that. That would kind of get the labor, if there's involved, off. And maybe give a little bit more education to the bicyclists, at least, not the people in cars. But they should be able to pass their driver's license too, I guess.
Thank you for that. And this is a comment, Paul and the Kiwanis Club has been doing some of this work already, so just want to acknowledge that. But before we go there, Paul.
Helmets, just
yeah.
helmet, bicycle
Okay.
helmets.
Mike, go ahead.
Well, a lot of data, a lot of numbers, a lot of information, and until I digest all this information, I can't make a recommendation. So that's why I voted no on it. I am not a believer that education is a replacement for enforcement. And I know we're very understaffed, so I can't see that. But when a person runs a stop sign, it's not that they don't understand what STOP means. That's not in education. They make a decision, basically, the chances of getting caught are slim and none, so I'm going for it. And until we, I think through staffing, create the, have more enforcement, things are going to happen. And I just don't think that education, handouts, all this stuff is going to change attitude. Let me change that. Going to change behavior. Behavior is one of the hardest things to change, and a flyer is not going to change it. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that with additional staffing will come additional enforcement. Thank you.
And years ago, and it actually involved a military film, but the director said, along the lines of what you're saying, scare tactics don't work. That's why driver's ed films don't work. Understanding works. So that's why you have to create an emotional and commitment, not just a scare tactic. And I think what you've done here is you've created understanding. And right down to including the fact of handheld accidents, hand-free cell phone use on the bicycle. I mean, that's pretty detailed, and that was phenomenal that you got that deep. And that we at the Burbank Police Department tracked that was happening, because I see people on their FaceTiming on their skateboard down on the Chandler Boulevard, and it just makes me. I'm just wondering where the common sense is.
Well, thank you for that. Any other comments on the report? Ann?
On page 5, I thought this was great. I can't imagine sitting down and actually doing the work that you did, so phenomenal. On page 5, it lists categories, location, street, injured, and collisions. And I almost know, there's a definite correlation, for instance, on Glen Oaks, 48 collisions, 48 injured. Is that number of collisions going down as reported?
Yeah, so these are the number of reported collisions, and then
We could assume that the number of collisions might be higher, there just was not an injury reported.
I pretty much counted, so there's sort of, I won't go into the real details of it, but there are some fields that talk about, the level of injury and those kinds of things. And so for the purposes of this, because again, some people may not want to report that they're even injured for some reason, let alone report, the actual collision, all those kinds of things. I just considered, any collision where a pedestrian or bicyclist was involved to be, even if there wasn't an injury reported, I sort of included those in the analysis in the sense that, psychologically, at minimum, you've been harmed, right, by being hit or,
So
by a
puts
car.
whole
So,
different slant on it.
but it is within the data set of collisions, right? So it's a little bit of a gray area, right? If you're hit by a car, you probably have some type of injury,
Right.
even if it's not a major
Okay.
injury kind of thing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Romit, go ahead.
Just a final comment. I do want to respectfully disagree with Commissioner Edelman, just because education is extremely important. It goes hand in hand with enforcement. Without education, how can you focus on how to properly enforce in those certain areas? And I can say that kind of parallel with the driver safety campaign, what we've seen when it comes to the dealerships that we've spoken to and the conversations they've had using the trifles that we've provided them, from downgrading from getting their son a Porsche 911 Turbo to a Honda Civic. And those are conversations that did happen. That came through that education that we provided. So I would have to say that both are equally important, and they do both have their space. And Layla, thank you so much for all the work that you've done on this.
Mike, go ahead.
Respectfully, I will disagree. every licensed driver in the state has been educated when he got his license. What happened?
I have a, Chief, if there's no injury involved, it's no police report, correct?
So again, that depends.
Is it possible?
So property damage or injury. We have to have one or the other. Property damage or injury to make a reportable collision. So if it's vehicle versus pedestrian,
Right.
is it possible that there's going to be damage to the vehicle where maybe the mirror got hit and knocked off, the side mirror got knocked off, and the person says, "I'm not hurt"? It could be.
So like a simple rear-ending where no one's injured, they exchange information, that would be a non-report, you wouldn't have that in our
It's not
statistics.
mandated, but that can be reported. So if it's just property damage, if you have a bumper to bumper and
Right.
cars are damaged, we will encourage people to usually just exchange information. If a party of that collision demands a police report, they say, "No, I want a police report taken," we're taking a report. If there's property damage or an injury, we're required to. I'll give you an example, a city vehicle. So one of our city trucks rear ends somebody and causes very minor damage to the bumper. We're taking that report just as to make Ray happy as a civil liability issue. We're taking that report. So it's going to be reported even if it's minor damage.
Well, I had a minor incident on Magnolia, and I called the police when I realized the other driver was lying to me. And so I wanted a police report to cover myself. And at that time, the police officer told me it wasn't necessary, but for me, I was concerned because I realized I thought I was being defrauded. So, but I understand that it's a waste of resources. It's not necessarily appropriate use of resources if it's not an emergency.
Like I said, we may encourage, if it's a minor property damage, we may encourage an exchange of information, but that doesn't mean that a report cannot be taken or won't be taken later.
Okay. Mike?
If you were involved with an accident, your insurance company used to send you a state of California form to document the accident. Do you get that information from the state DMV that an accident occurred in Burbank? If it wasn't reported, they didn't ask for police assistance.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
I asked, when I was on the Transportation Commission, I asked that, and actually one of the newer members of the commission at the time was a lawyer and immediately gave all the reasons why that wouldn't be legally possible, or it would be administratively overwhelming. But because I was looking for that as the statistic being more accurate, but that doesn't happen.
So the info is in Sacramento.
All right. Any other comments related to Layla's presentation? Layla, again, I want to thank you for putting this together. Absolutely a labor of love. Just really appreciate your follow through and dedication on this. So thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to item G4, which is general announcements by the Deputy Chief Adam Corneals. Brief announcements regarding upcoming events and/or items of note related to the police department. I do have a quick question for you. So, are you currently the Deputy Chief or acting Chief?
Yes. Yes to both.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So,
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the commission. I'm here to give you our brief announcements. I'll start off, we have a couple things. Weekend of April 5th to April 6th, our Baker to Vegas team participated in the annual run out in the desert. We took third place in our division, had an overall time of 15 hours and 56 minutes. We were fighting some good headwinds and some desert heat at the beginning, but it was a successful finish, so we will look forward to coming back next year. Some of you talked about the Community Academy. We graduated our 40th Community Academy class last Thursday, so that was a good success for us. We'll look forward to put on the next one. Last Thursday, we also graduated 2 new recruits from the LA Sheriff's Academy, and we have one more coming out on May 8th. So we're going to continue putting folks out into field training and work on the staffing numbers. Chief Quintero is going to be joining us next week. April 21st is going to be his first day here, so you will be seeing him at these in the future. We're looking forward to having him on board. And then upcoming events, we have April 26th on Saturday from 10 to 2. We have a drug take-back event in our back lot at the station. So if folks have prescription medications or something like that at home that they want to dispose of, we will take those off their hands and get rid of them in a safe manner. And my final thing is we have on Saturday, May 10th, we have Police Fire Service Day. That's going to be at our joint headquarters with the fire department, and that will be from 9 to 2, also in our back lot.
Fantastic. If I can add with that, just want to encourage, we will have a table there for the police commission. Again, thank you, Sherry, for helping us set that up. Going to encourage all the commissioners to if you're available, to be there for part or all of that.
That's
May
May 10th?
10th, yeah. Okay.
Could I ask?
Can-
You have a ribbon on
Yes.
your badge. What is that for?
That's for San Bernardino Deputy Cuevas. He was killed in a collision a couple weeks ago. His funeral is tomorrow.
Okay,
So those will come off after the funeral.
good to know when that happens.
Okay. Chief, thank you. Actually, just one last thought is, and I've heard this come up before. I know that you've got some transition that's going to be happening probably within the next couple of years. Some work that I was involved in previously, my understanding is that that officers are allowed to. I know how when we're in person with each other and everything, you want to drop all the formalities and everything like that. It's common practice for an officer to be able to be recognized with the highest rank that they've ever held. Is that correct? Over the course of their career?
You mean as far as like in retirement or?
Retirement or a salutation or something like that. So yeah.
Generally speaking, yes, I would say, yeah, that's
Okay.
typically.
All right. Well,
So-
I just want to say well earned, even though you probably don't want to be called it. I'm going to say it was well earned. So thank you.
Well, I also answered to Adam. So
Okay.
that's also
Exactly.
fine, yeah.
That's kind of what I thought.
All right.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So we're going to go ahead and move on to item H, which is introduction of agenda items for future meetings. We have a couple of things that are agendized, and I just want to go over those real quick. We already have, for May, we've agendized narcotics activity in the city. And then for May, we also have the RIPA report under Burbank Police Department. We also have for June, we have an update on the parking enforcement efforts since hiring parking enforcement contractor Laz Parking. Is it Laz or LAZ Parking?
They use Laz.
Laz, okay, so Laz Parking for that. So those are three things that we have already on. We have an additional agendized item, but we don't have a date set for it, which is a review of annual crime statistics. And then we also have the dashboard. I just want to name that we have we have two items already identified for next month. We have one item identified for June already. So I just want us to keep that in mind as we go through and agendize items for the May meeting. Let's go ahead and start with Paul and then Mike.
I don't know if this would be an additional item or if we could amend it, but for May, since I could think they go hand in hand, narcotics, can we include gang activity as well?
Is that something that that could be added to that presentation?
So
or do we-
I was going to make an ask already on the narcotics
Sure.
activity.
Sure.
For some sort of specificity. That is a huge topic.
Okay.
And I want it to be meaningful.
Yeah.
And so the blanket narcotics activity in the city
Yeah.
is going to be either we're going to be here for 4 hours talking about it, or it's going to be a very shallow, broad discussion that's not probably going to be all that informative.
Yeah.
So I want to know if there's some sort of specifics that the commission wants us to bring forward, so I can have my folks focus their efforts a little bit.
So I am going back and I'm taking a look at, let's see.
I asked for that.
Mike, you want to go ahead and, because I'm guessing that we probably clarified that at the time, because we wouldn't be
Yeah.
allowed to do a large blanket one. So Mike, do you want to clarify
I
what that was
remember I
for?
brought it up because I was looking at the daily arrest reports and saw that there was a narcotics component to the vast majority of the arrests.
Absolutely.
So I was interested in what is happening, basically, that so many people who are being arrested have this drug component. So what is that drug component? And, basically how it affects, crime in this city. Is there an association? I won't even make the blank say, is there an association between narcotics and the criminal activity going on in the city?
Okay.
Does that help provide some clarification?
It does.
Okay, fantastic. I was just trying to go back and look and see if we had anything in the minutes about that, but I wasn't successful in getting there. Paul?
No, then my suggestion about gangs would be something maybe we put on another agenda item.
Okay. Mike, you had a question for me a moment ago. You were just pointing out that we also have on the dashboard the mental health update.
Yeah, you didn't mention that.
No, I was only mentioning the things that were agendized, and so we haven't, the dashboard is different, and to remind folks, the dashboard is kind of Yeah, and Sherry, thank you for providing me a copy for this evening. The dashboard's kind of like something that we want to make sure that we're revisiting on a regular basis, and May coincides with May is Mental Health Month, so we've traditionally done that and gotten more information, especially over the last couple of years as there's been more information being introduced, or more resources being introduced around in the mental health space and law enforcement. So it's not agendized right now. We would have to agendize that tonight if we wanted it. I'm hoping that we do.
Yeah.
But
I
we,
just need a clarification.
yep, that's what that's about. Okay. So, Mike?
Yeah, thank you for the heads up on the 4 hours. I wonder if there is a way that you can break that out into different things, maybe have more than one time on our agenda for maybe different parts over a period of time.
That could happen as well. We would have to agendize that and go through that process, but that's
I think
something-
with the clarification, I think
Okay.
we'll get it under 4 hours, I promise, for the next meeting. But I
Ho-
think the
hopefully-
clarification,
We-
it helps. It's going to help us focus what
We-
we're presenting.
We have a 3-hour Granicus time limit for this meeting, which we've tested and exercised in the past, so we can't do 4 hours. But if something comes up as a result of that presentation and it spurs another question, we can absolutely agendize it at that time for a future meeting.
Okay, that's what we're doing now, right?
That's what, yeah, that's what we're doing. But we haven't had the presentation yet, so we don't know what's been
okay.
spurred to,
Okay.
to do that. So we got the 2 items for May. I'd like to go ahead, because it's important to me, I'd like to go ahead and agendize a mental health update on the status of the MET team and the and any changes to the resource allocation and findings in the community related to mental health and law enforcement. Is that specific enough? And I'm specifically talking about updates from last year. We don't need to rehash necessarily what we've covered before.
Second that.
Mike?
I wonder if we can delay that. There is a second Met team being hired. I would really be interested to see what happens when we get a second Met team and what the results of having a second team are. Because
So we are in the process, but that is going to, we're engaging with our partners at DMH and the bureaucracy there, and also fighting our own staffing levels to staff it. So we're going to be,
Gotcha.
we're going to be a ways out from having a second team staffed,
Yeah.
and then I would think we would probably want about a year of assessment time to really be able to
Right.
give you a good comparison.
Right.
So if you want a sooner, an update on
Yeah.
things, we can do it sooner, and then maybe look at something later once we have 2 teams in the
I was
field.
being too hopeful.
And I actually would like to hear an update on the challenges. So I know that there's a new vehicle that was put into use this past year. It would be good to hear the challenges experienced with expanding the program as well, if that would be okay. Okay. So
And there's a lot of, like, for instance, the vehicle being unmarked, that's something that the average person wouldn't even have thought of.
right.
So there's a lot of those incidental things.
But we can't get into
can't
discussion.
discuss
This
it.
is just a
Well, I'm just
motion
saying,
for the
but-
agenda item.
But that people
Yeah.
need to know. And
Yeah.
we're sharing
Yeah.
information.
Yep, okay.
I was just going to second your motion.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Can you clarify that motion one more time?
Sure. The motion is in recognition of May as Mental Health Month, to receive an update from the Burbank Police Department on any changes, updates, findings related to the interaction between mental health and law enforcement over the course of the last year. And then Romik's got a second on that. All in favor, say aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you for that. So that gives us 3 items for the month of May. Just want to kind of name that so we don't get too deep into it. We currently have something agendized for June. We have we can deal with the June agenda in May. I also have a future agendized review of annual crime statistics. Does anybody feel a need to put that on the May agenda at this time, or we can hold off for that right now? Okay. Are there any other agenda items for May that we would like to add? All right, I'll close that out. So with that, our next meeting date is going to be Wednesday, May 21st, 2025 at 6 p.m. right here. Thank you all for being here, and I adjourn this meeting.